Hi, I'm Neil of Team Teacher, and in this video I'm looking at resources and books for using stories in the classroom. Let's check it out. So depending on what skill that you're training or particular activities that you're doing, say like drama, there tends to be these what we call resource books for teachers. And basically they're often these big books of printable lesson plans and materials that you can use instantly, that give you a guide and you can just, print something off, have a read of it, make sure you've got all the materials, and then take it into class. And we have these resource books, and there are plenty of standard resource books for teachers with these printable lesson plans based around stories that you can use. For example,
Cambridge Copy Collection, Oxford Resource Books for Teachers.
However, these standard resource books, they all seem to follow a particular format, and it's understandable. There's a format that's sold through the CELTA and many other teaching English courses, like myself. I'm a prominent advocate of PPP, especially for new teachers and large classes, but it can be a little bit formulaic, and a lot of these story resource books are the same. They all seem to have this format of introducing the title of the story, and then we're predicting what it's about, and maybe pre-teaching some vocabulary so they understand the story before they understand the words, before they actually read the story. Then we read the story with some sort of additional reading activity, like a popcorn reading, or reading fast or slow or in different voices, taking turns, all that sort of jazz. And then there's some sort of post-reading gap fill exercise, discussion, or even role-playing of the story. For me, it's fine. It's tried and trusted, but it just lacks this certain, I just don't know what, it lacks a little bit of a spark. However, I came across a book called Images by Jamie Keddy, and something clicked. So it is a teacher resource book, and it does have lesson plans, but the stories don't come from texts. They come from, you guessed it, images. The book includes about 61 activities, 35 original images, and you can use it instantly, but more importantly, it examines the possibilities of using a wide range of your own original images or resources, including art, photography, advertising, just the internet in general, even student-generated images. The biggest takeaway that I got from the book, though, wasn't the images. It was the deeper ideas presented by Jamie, that no matter what authentic materials that you use, be it text, images, videos, and we'll get to that later, it's how you tell the story that matters. Let's take a look at one of those lessons.
So you may recognize this image straight away. It's the image from the cover of the book with the panda and the small boy, and the panda's taking that picture. So I thought this would be a good lesson to actually look at, and it's actually the first lesson in the book. Now, remember we talked about the format of lessons being kind of a little bit formulaic, in that there's lots of pre-teaching, then going into the story or reading, and then there's kind of a post-reading. Well, Images kind of blows that out of the water, and I'm going to let you know how that works. First things first, he doesn't actually show the students the picture to begin with. He just tells them that he is going to describe an interesting picture, and then he will describe that image, that picture, without letting the students see it, which is important because he doesn't want them to see that panda. And he gives you an example that you could use, or you could come up with your own, but I've just got to stress that you don't talk about the actual panda in the image, because it kind of ruins the points of the lesson. But it's very top heavy on description, on listening to that story. And then he's going to repeat the story a second time. When he repeats the story a second time, he's going to be trying to elicit any sort of problem words from the students that they don't know, that he can kind of go over. So there is kind of a bit of pre-teaching, but it's involved within that story. It's from that story. It's come kind of organically, almost naturally. Now from there, the students are put into groups or pairs, and they have to write out that description of the picture. So remember, they still have not seen this picture yet, and they try to do it as accurate as they can from memory. And then from there, they are going to be comparing that with other sets of pairs and groups to see what they have written and if they need to make any changes. And then you do a little bit of feedback, and the teacher writes the description on the board, and the students can compare with the description. So it's all revolved around this little story that he's told just about this picture, and they've not even seen this picture yet. So there's an awful lot of build up, an awful lot of anticipation to what this interesting picture is. And it's interesting from also the way that he's described it as well, because you're like, whoa, how did this all come together? So there's a lot of intrigue already built in there. And then at the end, he asks the students if they want to see the photograph, but before getting them to see the photograph, he lets them know that there's a surprise. So there's even another layer added to the little onion of a lesson, and they have to kind of revisit all of their descriptions and think, well, what's surprising about this? So they're really engaged not only just with the story, but with their own work as well. And finally, at the end, they get to see that picture, and and at that point, there's probably going to be a little bit of a laugh. There's going to be a lot of relief from that tension. But that's the end. I mean, he gives some variations, but that's the end of the lesson. I mean, obviously from there you can kind of continue on and talk about the story and build your own activities on if you so wish, but it's completely different to those formats of the books that I've talked about, and you can kind of see how it builds up. And that's what's really important. It's important that the students and the teachers should be engaging with the story first and foremost before they're actually looking at the materials. They're provided that context.
Jamie's ideas really connected with myself, and I saw how much my students enjoyed the lessons from his book. That I actually did a search to see if he had any more teaching resources, and guess what? The man is a resource machine. He is one of the originators of teaching resources on the internet. He had a website way back in the day before we had TeamTeacherChina.com. He had his own, his resources was based around stories, whereas a lot of our resources are based around those PowerPoints that we use in the large public school classes. Well, not only does he have his website with a whole bunch of free resources, the website is Lessonstream.com, that's LESSONSTREAM.com, where you can get these instant use lesson plans. But he had another book, and this book is called Videotelling. It's another resource book for teachers, and it has more stories. I think there's about 45 interactive stories to use in the classroom, but each story is based on the narrative of a YouTube video. There's also short films, viral videos, adverts, music videos. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but it's basically based around videos. And you know, if you think of text being engaging, images being, you know, telling 1,000 words, imagine what you get from videos. And you know, then you add Jamie's skill of teaching story and his ideas, and you've got a really great recipe for a super engaging lesson, and that's a really interesting technique to use in the classroom. However, this is not just a book of all those lesson plans. It's a book that really details an intelligent, creative, and student-centered approach to working with videos and storytelling. And it can be adapted to nearly any content. So he's not just giving you resources that you can print off, use from his lessonstream.com website, or the lesson plans within the Videotelling book, or even images. But within the Videotelling book, he's going into detail on how he made these lessons. So think of it this way. Before, you are just giving a man a fish, but he's teaching you on how to fish. So he's really detailing his process so you can replicate it. And I think that's what's the really important thing about the Videotelling book. Each unit details specific methods such as withholding information or using student-generated questions that build students' language and critical thinking skills. These methods are illustrated through specific videos and activity suggestions that can be explored and adapted by any teacher. And I really wanted to stress that point, that you are learning the skills of storytelling and teaching stories, along with having all those materials to get you started as well. You might have thought, hey, he's going to give me a whole bunch of different books and resource books for me to look into to use stories in the classroom. But I really do think that the book just stops with Jamie Keddy. Images is a fantastic book to get you started, especially because you've got the images right there and you can just print those out with using those lesson plans instantly. And then you've got Videotelling as well, is if you want to go a little bit more multimedia, and you can use those videos along with those corresponding lesson plans. So images and Videotelling are both fantastic books that allow you to instantly get using fantastic stories and lesson plans in the classroom. But I would push you towards getting Videotelling even more, because you get to the insight and the explanation from Jamie himself as to how to make these story lessons using your own authentic materials. And you cannot forget that regardless of these books, there is also Lessonstream.com, where he's continuously putting out new lessons based on videos, images, other authentic materials. And there's a very engaged community there as well of people that you can speak with that share their own lesson ideas and lesson plans. And he has some fantastic interviews with other teaching professionals and professionals within the story world that you can get a subscription to, and it's pretty reasonable if I remember right. And you can also, I believe he's got a video course coming up as well, where you can just, everything from Videotelling about the story will be included within this storytelling course, and possibly even more. So if you're looking for resources for using story in the classroom, you cannot go better than Jamie Keddy. It's Jamie Keddy, Keddie. Number one person for teaching using story within the classroom. Team Teacher China has a sister channel called ELT Under the Covers, and we had the amazing opportunity to interview Jamie Keddy, and you can see that full interview for free on the ELT Under the Covers YouTube channel, and I'll put a link below in the description box and within the comments for you to go watch that interview. And it's got some great insights into Jamie, and he can further explain what his method is. And I'll also include links below for you to get your copies of that Videotelling. We've got some discount codes that you can definitely use and get yourself a copy right now, so you can get using it in your classroom the next time that you teach. Now, I'm going to leave you with some thoughts from the man himself, Jamie Keddy, because we've taken a clip from ELT Under the Covers interview. But before then, remember, if you liked this video, if you found it educational and informative, please subscribe to TeamTeacherChina.com and ELT Under the Covers. And remember to like, share, and let's go over to Jamie.
Where would you start if you want to be this, storyteller, to create this teacher that, that we've just been describing?
I want to give all my secrets away. I generally do. I would say, okay, 3 pieces of advice. Number one, don't assume that you have to get materials to provide the stories. Let's imagine you have to teach a subject or teach a class on the subject of misunderstandings. Why are you looking for a video to do the work? Flick through your memories. I'm sure you can find a very short anecdote, a situation involving you and some friends and a misunderstanding. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is start small. You said this before. Look for stories that are bite-sized. I mentioned misunderstandings. I love stories about misunderstandings, but stories about your own language learning experiences, especially failures, those are gold. And if they're funny, why are we not using them? So start small, tell a story. And the third thing is, I think that people don't say this, and because what's the secret to good storytelling? You ask that, what makes a good storyteller? People look at the performance and mention things like gesture, eye contact, body language, look at articulation, voice quality. But the secret to good storytelling, is not about the performance, it's about the preparation and the reflection. You've got to think about how you're going to tell your story. You've got to create some kind of script, even if it's just in your head or just a sequence of very basic bullet points. But you've got to prepare it and think about how you're going to tell it, how you're going to start it, structure it, what's important, what's not important, what can you discard, what does it mean to you, and why are you telling it? Are there any questions you can ask your students, either before, during, or after? If it's a very short story, I don't recommend too many questions, but there are usually, if not always, questions we can ask students to get them involved in order to try and make it their story as well. So those are the 3 things. Number 1, consider your own stories first. Number 2, start small, bite-sized stories. Number 3, develop them. And development means not just preparation, but reflection. And if I give one more for luck, collect them. Collect your stories. I use an app. I use an app called Bear. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Bear as in the
Like the
animal.
Yes, just like the animals. So this is an app. These are all my stories. So the most recent story is called Awkward Barcelona Street Interaction, which is not the sexiest title, but it's a story in development. It's a working title. Yes.
So
Fantastic. This is gold.
one of
Absolute gold.
the things that kind of triggered off in my mind actually when you were talking about that, and you were talking about going for sort of personal stories first, and I think one of the things that sort of appeals about that to me is I always feel that whenever I'm into it, the students are also into it. So if I'm like giving a lesson about something that I find interesting, then it's like infectious, that my interest in this subject or in this story, right, or the emotional elements of this story, this emotional memory, these memories of this thing that was embarrassing or funny or whatever it was, when I kind of relive those moments, then the students can really pick up on that, and it that kind of draws them into that narrative as well.
That's absolutely beautifully said. When we're talking about the teacher as a storyteller, the image that we've got to banish from our mind is a monologue, a 30-minute monologue with silent listeners. It's those tiny little things that Neil's mentioned, connecting the course book with the teachers, are selling the material. I mean, when did a teacher, using graded readers, for example, I'm giving a talk in Italy, online actually, so it's not really in Italy, on teachers encouraging their students to read and looking at different techniques. And one of the most fundamental ones, if you're using a single book for the whole class, is just to tell the students beforehand how much you yourself love it and why, what it means to you, that it's just such a fantastic story. And that goes so far. Students might not agree with you, but it's going to be them, but it's going to just enhance their enjoyment a little bit. And if it doesn't, they might even end up saying, well, I didn't enjoy it that much, but I really like the fact there's somebody who does. Maybe there's something I'm missing. What could it be? That it's a richer experience all around. It's how human beings work. It's as simple as that. That to me is where storytelling is, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that reminded me of one of your old lessons on Lessonstream. That the one about you use the video about the capuchin monkeys, and one of the big moments in that lesson is when the students are listening without seeing the video, and they hear the audience laugh at what the monkeys are doing. And at that moment, the whole class is hooked on, they want to know why the audience laughed. You can see it. Even the kid at the back who normally isn't paying attention is suddenly why did they laugh? Why did they laugh? What happened?